Sarah for bringing her snacks. Please help yourself. She brought them to each. And she would like some feedback. Yes, please. Great. Okay. For those of you that haven't met Sarah, Sarah is the founder of Alk Seaweed, and she's been on a bit of a business journey lately, and this is the result. So if you can give some feedback, that would be fantastic. Welcome to those that are joining us online to this weird hybrid event in COVID times. You can see that we're all nicely distanced, and if you do get up, please, use your masks. There's another housekeeping thing. I think that's about it. So let's get started. So before we get into the swing of things, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So for those that don't know me, and I think I know everyone in the room, but hi to those online. My name is Jane. I run a business called The Business of Food. We started in 2008 with a kitchen incubator, and it was in response to an obvious need for compliance space for new food producers to be making their product, but also a place to gather, a community to be able to share knowledge, share connections, and give support to everyone else on the same journey. Because I think most of you here know what that journey entails, and sometimes it can be really bumpy. So for the next 12 years, I worked at Bentley in my other kitchen. And then we moved into a large university and moved that incubator kind of style into university. For the next 2 years, we worked on some amazing projects and products, but it actually felt like I'd disappeared out of the startup scene for that couple of years. And when we emerged at the end of 2019, after having given up that contract, it was very clear that the industry had changed around us. And we actually didn't need a kitchen because there were other kitchens available at that point in time. But there was still that need for support, connection, and learning in the food industry. So that's why we're still continuing with the events that we have always put on. Hopefully we will put on more this year because we have taken a bit of a hiatus with not being able to gather. Online just isn't the same. We don't get to share the gorgeous food that's made and talk about the packaging that it's in and where you got the ingredients from and all that kind of stuff online. Those conversations just don't happen. So hopefully, watch the space. We'll have more of those events. But I think the benefit of running an incubator and a community like that is that I get to meet these amazing kinds of people. So I thought I'd bring them all along today because each of them have their own stories and their own businesses. And we're getting so many questions about how do you scale up a food business from being a bootstrap startup into greater volumes, greater markets, and basically greater process, right, Laurie? Yeah. So let me introduce you to them. Laurie on the end is the founder and owner of San Elk Organic Stock. She makes an amazing range of product, and I think she's got some show and tell. Brian in the middle is actually from the Healthy Food Crew, and Brian had his own need that he then turned into a co-manufacturing business for growing, scaling businesses. Yep. Kay from Health Magic and Colin from Health Magic, who got out of sitting up the front, obviously, is a health food distributor. So I think you can see where they all fit, right? So Laurie, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to San Elk and your business journey and where you came from and where you want to be?
So I started the business with my husband 4 years ago. We were looking for healthier alternatives to stocks. So it was a powder that it was something that we use in a lot of our dishes at home. A lot of the ones on the market we found had preservatives, additives, so we're looking for something a little bit more natural. We started making small batches at home and then started selling at markets, so at home from our registered kitchen. And then went into retailers just to see if there was a demand. So started giving them samples and following that up. And I guess from there, the business grew. So I remember when we first started, it was there with my small Kenwood mixer, doing 1 kilo batches at a time, filling them all up into these containers here, which is quite labour intensive. And then probably 6 months after that, trying to do everything in-house and bootstrap, it was quite difficult because you're running the operations, you're also trying to do the delivery. In our case, we make it in-house, so trying to manage it all. We knew that we had to go down the distributor model because we wanted to grow the business and we wanted to be sustainable long-term. So 6 months later, we partnered up and went national with distributors. In order to help grow the brand and make it available in more retailers and increase the reach. And that's just a little bit about how we got started, a little bit about our journey. And I guess for us, it's just to make it a brand. We want people to enjoy cooking, more people are getting back in the kitchen, especially after COVID, looking for more health conscious, looking for more natural products. Originally when we started, it was first with the stock, so now that we're seeing there's more of a demand, we're looking at growing the brand further, introducing new products, so that's something that we're working on at the moment.
So you've been in business for about
Probably 4 years now.
nice. Nice. Brian, your website intrigues me because I can't get onto that one little phrase. For those of you that haven't been to the Healthy Food Crew website, Brian says it was an accidental startup, right?
Pretty much. Kay and Colin will attest to it. So how long was Rumbles? Probably 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I started a business with my old business partner. We used to make paleo cookies, right when paleo was massive. I don't think I've still seen a trend that big that quick, to be honest. So we started that business 5 or 6 years ago. We reached a point where we were looking at outsourcing someone else to make the products for us because we just couldn't hand roll cookies anymore. Fast forward a few years, couldn't find anyone to do it. So we found that there's a gap in the market for people that are sort of at home. Well, where's the next step? And we couldn't find anyone, so we decided to be the next step, pretty much, for people who were looking to move on. There's plenty of manufacturers who do tens to hundreds of thousands of units, but there's not many that do 500 to 1,000 units, for example. And there's not many that are willing to work with startups either. They don't have that mentality. I've been in business for a long time. I've always worked for myself. So I know that you have to be adaptable, you have to be quick, and you have to be able to think outside the box. So about 2 years ago, we started Healthy Food Crew. My business partner had left, and I thought, well, let's change the way we do things. So that's how we started. So it was sort of by accident, but there's a lot of work to get to that accident. So yeah.
By design.
By design, yeah. By design.
Thanks, Brian.
That's right.
So, Kay, you on your website, you say you started delivering in Ukraine.
Yeah, we did. Well, we did. We being me, the 6-month-old baby, and the buggy. And so Colin and I moved over from New Zealand in 2000, and so left corporate jobs, and then Cole was working for Renai. So then it was about, well, what do I do? And my sister was making fruit bars over in New Zealand, so we put the hard-earned cash on the table and bought some product over and did the whole anxiety thing about the stress of importing product. And there was no car, but Colin had a company car, we hadn't purchased a car yet, so my target market was in walking distance. Where can I get to with a bubby and a buggy? And so it was, it's the cold face of cold calling, so that's what we did. So when we talk about health magic, we're a humble company built from the grassroots up, and that's where we all start. And so the journey has always started with an epiphany of an idea, I will do this. And then you quickly realise that epiphany comes with a whole to-do list that is supposed to fit in the 24 hours of the day, as well as while you're still doing your other job or whatever it may be. So we started off with one product, one bubby, one buggy. And we went from, health food stores. Health Magic was the name of the company, and what is the name of the company? And we started with health food stores. They were 95% of our business. And then I'd love to say it was by clever design and planning that we had this wonderful business plan that we just rolled out. But it happens by accidental opportunity and how you pivot in those opportunities and how you seize the moment without being too stressed and overworked. So I played around with this hobby business for a while until Colin came and sorted me out. And we ended up working together, which is an environment where, you've got to work out your boundaries and things with regards to that. And then there's always critical moments in business, and those come along, and that can catapult you into the next space. Like you can be knocking on the back door of something, and sometimes you don't even know what the next space looks like, and then you say yes to an opportunity. And our moment was when Brook Farm, which is a muesli company, came knocking. And so they knocked on our door and we said yes, and they said yes. And that took us from being a 95% health food store business into independent grocery. And as much as we are all talking better for you food, we need to be looking at the independent grocery game, or the majors, or other channels. Because ultimately, and Brian would say, that you need volume to drive your business, and you need economies of scale to get your costs down, and you need pricing models that allow you to have the strata for distribution, promotion, and marketing. So we've journeyed through all of those elements. They're scary, and you have scary moments at times, and then you end up with we've landed with a company. We have about 100 brands, and we are working very closely. We want to be seen as marketing partners with our brands, and we have a team now which has a great cultural feel, and so that's where we are today.
Fantastic. You know all about those ups and downs, Laurie, because you've got a family, and a lot of people start out with a business like a full-time business, and then try and do it on the side. You've got a family and a business, and a very new family.
Yeah.
So jungle. Talking about the scary moments, though, I don't want to kind of turn people off, but I do want to present a realistic view. Laurie, what was one of the biggest scary moments for you? Because I think you had some problems with your packaging in particular, didn't you?
Yes, I think the best way to describe a food business is like a roller coaster ride. You have your highs, you have your lows. But the best way to get through it is perseverance and keep persisting, because at the end of the day, we all share that same passion. So with us, when we first started, we knew that we needed a point of difference to get the attention of people. There are a lot of stocks and broths on the market. What's going to differentiate us besides ingredients? So one thing was packaging, having something that's sustainable and also environmentally friendly. So it's a long time to design a craft paper cylinder. We finally found an Australian supplier, which we're really excited with, who got the work done overseas. But every time a sample would come back, the font was different, the size was different. And this is after multiple samples. This is after 6 months of going back and forwards. And it's like, we need to make sure that every run we do, we have the exact same size, because we've got to fill it, and the stores need to know exactly shelf space, how they're going to do it. We can't come back different. So finally, after 12 months, it did set us back. Unfortunately, we had to outsource overseas. One was cost, because, even though there's a huge focus on sustainable packaging in Australia at the moment, I know a lot of companies are working towards it, but it is 3 times as much. And also the minimum order quantities are quite high. So we found an overseas supplier and ordered some samples, and they came back right. So finally we knew that we were able to start. So it did set us back quite a bit. And even sourcing ingredients. The one thing I say to people is make sure you have backup suppliers. You know, especially when you're doing, there's such a big jump and a big difference for when you're producing small volumes to operating larger scales, because you're going from 500 grams to 1 kilo to 25 kilos times 10, so you're producing larger quantities. So you need to make sure that if a product can't be supplied, in order to keep supplying, that you're able to source the ingredients. I guess in our case, we make it in-house, so it's a little bit different. And the reason we chose to do that rather than outsourcing to a contract manufacturer is because of the nature of the product. So we have to mix it and pack it. It is quite laborious. With future products, we might look at outsourcing, but this time we're keeping it in-house, and that makes a difference as well. So they're all different things to consider. You do come across a lot of hurdles, but you just have to keep going. And also time frames do blow out. Something you have a plan, and in my case with the family, I tried to do new products and have them launched by February, but things come up and then things get set back. It's hard trying to juggle it all, but you just have to say to yourself, okay, I'll just push that deadline, I'll keep persevering, I'll keep doing it. And the other thing is we all try and bootstrap too, because we're all worried, when we're starting off small, but I guess my personal advice, well, you're counting the dollars, time's ticking out the window. And I guess, the biggest thing for me, turning point was, reaching out for help and getting that mentor to review the plan, review goals by managing a family, to be able to get to that point to overcome challenges.
So how did you find that support network for you? Because as a business owner, you've got, you're juggling your family, you're juggling your business, you're doing your production all yourself. Do you have a support network besides family? Yeah.
My background is in HR and in business, always working in the health and wellbeing sector. The one thing I found quite hard transitioning into food, even though I'm quite passionate about it, was that it was quite lonely and working on my own a lot. So because I'd be working from home and making the product, I didn't have that people contact. That was something that I missed, because when I first started, before I went to a distributor model, I was able to get to the stores, I was able to chat to the clients, get to know them, they got to know me, and that built that relationship. But then you jump to a distributor model and you're making it in-house, and you just assume, the products are on the shelf, but you're like, you still need to support that distributor and work with them.
Doesn't get easier.
So there's different challenges at different levels. But I think for me, one of the most important things that I realised and needed was networking, and how important it is. Working with like-minded people, getting that support, working with others that you can talk about the problems, because not many people are open to it. Not many people tell you about how difficult it is behind the scenes. So you can see on social media something that seems, they're going really well, they're doing really good, but really you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, because people show you all the good stuff, but not many people talk about the hurdles that they've overcome to get there. So I think networking for me and getting back on the road is huge, that relationship building.
Yeah, I think we would say that from a distribution perspective as well, that it's really important to work as a team and that you're actually in a partnership relationship. So distribution fundamentally is about moving boxes efficiently and leveraging shelf space. So you have teams of people, in our case our field team, which are building relationships with the accountant managing that space, and we work and leverage off that relationship to introduce new products in, and then efficiently move boxes to store and bring those costs of product movement down. But it's really critical for first-hand feedback from the market as the brand owners, that you do stay engaged, and it might be visiting stores, it might be going in and doing a tasting, or it might be participating in events that they put on or something, or being involved. Like Ritchie's are very big on their activation pieces now, and they look favourably on brands that can activate with them. So big brands would go and pay their activation fees, which start at $2,000 to be involved. Most startups can't participate in that level. But for something like that, as far as a distributor is concerned, we can facilitate that and break that cost down by bundling people together. But just being able to be seen and be visual with regards to your key accounts is a critical piece.
And I think also, Laurie, you get to a point where you go, well, do I want to manufacture or do I want to just sell the stuff? I think it's too hard to do both. You get to a point where at the start you have to do both, but then you get to a point where what do I actually want to do? And I think that's the hard That's a really tough decision because you don't want to let go of your product, but then that's right. But if you don't, then how are you going to grow the product?
You need to create time.
Yeah.
You must come across that a lot, Brian, because, working in the healthy food space, both you and Kay, you get a lot of passionate food business owners, wanting to do the best for the planet, the best for people that they see as customers. How do you take over their baby?
It's not. I mean, I guess for us, we call ourselves the little person's big person. So we try and stay on the same level as the people that we're working with, even though they need us to be at a higher level. As soon as you start talking a higher level, you just lose people. So for us, it's about staying on the same level. And because we've had a startup, when we had Rumbles, we started from the ground up as well. So we know how hard it is, but we also know the things you should and shouldn't be doing at the same time. So I guess for someone to give you their baby, as you call it, is very difficult. But for us, it's about going, well, we've been there. We haven't done it all because no one ever does it all. But we know the hurdles and we know the hiccups that you're going to face. And we're very flexible in terms of how we do things. If you want us to do 2% of your project and you want to do 98%, then that's fine. We'll do the 2%, you do the 98%. So it's just about making the people feel comfortable, knowing that if they want some control, they can have control, but having all the control isn't always the best thing either to help grow and develop your product. So.
Because I think you're right, working with a bigger co-manufacturer, they want to take on a lot of the doing. So they want to, source the ingredients for you. They want to source the packaging. They might actually, also want to take on, some of those distributor
which I think is fine if you're happy to go down that path. But a lot of startups don't really want to go straight down that path because they want to see it grow.
Exactly.
So if you can get someone who can work alongside you and do bits and pieces for you until you're ready to let the whole thing go, then that's the key. I think that's the challenge. Because there's plenty of big manufacturers and there's plenty of them that will just take your stuff, make it, and sell it for you, which is fantastic. But you got to be ready to relinquish a lot of control, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you will have seen a lot of, passionate food business owners as well, right?
Yeah.
In that space, especially.
Yes.
How do you make a judgment of the person and the product that comes to you about whether they're ready for a distributor?
We counsel would be what I would say. And so, there's a process. The distribution by nature is a process. So there's a process with regards to onboarding a brand, if you like. And quite often, the first hurdle is once you hear the story, because the story is always full of passion, And the product is amazing. And it's amazing at the markets or at the smaller stores where you're selling and delivering one-on-one and you're talking to that store owner and making that connection, because then it's bigger than the product. The true test of the product comes when you pop it on an IGA shelf. And I use IGAs because they're really removed. They're selling real estate. They're not selling your product, they're selling real estate. And so you pop it on there and you go and step back. You might walk up and down the aisle and then you come back and you glance. And did you see your product? Because that's what it's about. That's where the packaging piece comes in. So we can have discussion around that, and then once it's on the shelf, because the distributor's job, without being too callous, is to get it to the shelf. And then to manipulate and massage the space to improve visuality. Our job is to try and make that real estate as visual as possible with either stock weight, positioning. Nobody wants to be down in the death corridor. Nobody wants to be up high where granny can't reach it. They want to be in that sweet spot or the counter. But everybody's after the sweet spot or the counter, right? Everybody wants it. And they go, oh, but my product works so well on the counter. Yep, It does.
Everyone
And
says.
then you get a Colonial Fresh who will go and say, you know what, we're taking all boxes off the counter now. Nothing's going on the counter. Or a relay will happen in an IGA as soon as our field team leaves. Somebody will come in because there's another product being cut in, and they will get relayed, and all of a sudden you're on the top because you're not part of that rep's portfolio. So there's movement and fluidity in the market all the time, which requires to be babysat. So those are the things that we talk about. Then we talk about the pull-through, and people rattle off really quickly. Social media, I'm going to be using social media, and I might have a PR company, because those are low cost, or perceived as low cost, sort of facilitation pieces to help promote the brand. But it really is like closing your eyes and throwing a handful of confetti up in the air, and it will land somewhere. It might land by Lamana, where we've got a good display, but it might not. It might be in Timbuktu. And so what Lamana, for something like them, are interested in is, okay, we'll put the product in, but we're going to be assessing that product for an ROI on that real estate. And if it's not turning, you know, so when we get product in, we want to make as much as possible, we want that to turn. And maybe you might be sending Auntie Mavis in there just to go and get the product off the shelf, but you want to have the perception of it that it's turning, and hopefully the brand does that on its own. But for some products, people need to make a decision, a critical decision, that they're going to invest their $10 or their $5 or whatever, take it home and experience it, and you hope that that experience is going to be as sweet for them as what it is for you, because you're the closest to the brand, you have the most heart in the brand. And then they come back, because the real sale is number 2. That's the sale. The first time was a trial, and so then that creates demand, and you know, and there are pieces to the jigsaw puzzle. So when we have brands come in, and we do have many, we've actually just started using Monday.com, hopefully wisely. And for Colin, who runs the business, I've put all the brands, all the products that are on existing brands already in our portfolio, and new products available to you, up on Monday.com, and all the ones we have on the board underneath that are potential brands. So when you visually see that, there's a lot of movement in this space, and our job is to make sure that when we have a get together, a meeting, a first meeting, that we can do the job that we're saying that we're going to do, that we can actually take your product and get it to market. And that comes down to time, because the reps have 30 minutes probably, 45 minutes maybe, because we like to think that our reps have exceptional relationships with our retailers. So they massage that. The IGAs are easier from that point of view. Sometimes the health food stores are harder, because quite often they're not dissimilar to us. They are business owners, they're running their business, and they've got to see this client over here before they come back and talk to you. So you might be there an hour or something like that. That's more business-like in the IGA space. And so you want to make sure that you're not going to lose 6 months talking to a distributor who's not actually going to be able to get your product to the volume that you need to engage your 3PL, so that you can get more time on your charter and actually build new product, or build more marketing, or build more tastings. And it is fluid. It's a fluid dynamic of all these things interplaying, and it's, you know, it's a dance, and sometimes it's a bit hard, sometimes it's wonderful, sometimes it's just a success. And I was going to say about the scary moments, those are your growth moments, can I say? They're actually, I probably should use a different word, but those are the moments that you grow in your business, and you push out that circle just a little bit further, because you come up with a solution, like the packaging. Did I answer your question?
Kind of, yes. We spoke a lot about product, and you used a jargon word in there that I'm going to actually ask you to describe to the audience, which is 3PL.
Oh, 3PL. But that's this man's job.
Oh, yeah. Go on, Brian. What's 3PL?
Third-party logistics, I suppose.
There you go.
It's the word for it.
Yeah. Every industry has its jargon, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Laurie, you've been on you're still on that kind of journey that, you know, Kay's just described, right? So tell us what your ultimate goal is.
Yes, our ultimate goal is to have our product in as many build that pantry staple range, and have our product in as many people's homes as possible, and get people cooking and excited about it. and to also grow a sustainable business. So there's a big difference between having a hobby and actually growing it into a sustainable long-term business that can be profitable down the track.
And that's where I think the growing pains analogy is really good, because, you know, it's like you're a teenage business and, you know, you're trying to fit into your own feet or something, right?
And when you think you've got it, you haven't.
Yeah. Things do change quite often, so you have to be able to adapt as well. And again, you know, depending on what type of product you have, it'll it'll cater to different markets and different stores. And even when you're looking for distributors, it all depends. You've got to look at, okay, well, do they predominantly service the cafe industry, or do they mainly do restaurants or health food stores and retailers? All those things are things to take into
And you actually might
consideration.
have a different distributor for those different channels. So a food service distributor is quite different to a retail distributor, for argument's sake. Because at the end of the day, it's once again, from our point of view, the way we would construct our field team is, again, return on investment. So they have the skill set and the relationships already in place for retail, but if we get asked as a distributor to take this into the cafe market, we're going to go, we're not set up for that. And so if a person is looking for a distributor to do the lot, then we would bow out. We would tap out from that and say, well, we're not the right fit for that. And in our experience, we would actually probably recommend that you divide those two market segments.
Yeah.
So if your product does have a food service application.
Definitely, I agree. Because you might find someone that will do it all, but then they end up doing nothing really.
Yeah.
So if you've got a product, say like the broths, which can be split, you go, well, I'll need a distributor for that and then a distributor for that. And then because they're different markets, everything else changes. So your packaging is different for food service, your margins are different for food service, everything's just completely different. So you sort of can't fit one product into, it's very hard, I think, to fit one product into both markets. So there's another level that you've got to think about if you're thinking of going down a different path as well.
And then that impacts you as a co-manufacturer, I imagine, because it becomes different packaging, different sizing, different, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so what we tend to do, we look at the product and we go, what do you want to do with it? Most people want to get it into the supermarket. But then we go, well, you know, would it work in the supermarket? How would it work in the supermarket? Is it going to be cost effective in the supermarket? So there's a lot of things that people don't think about. Everyone wants their product in the supermarket, but it's a lot of work to get your product into a supermarket and then to keep it in the supermarket. What is it, 12 weeks or something they give you to prove your product in the supermarket. So we sort of have that conversation and go, well, is it better suited to a different industry? Is it better for food service? And then if it is, we go, well, you know, your path to there is completely different. Your packaging is different, your distribution again is different. So it's a completely different path. And food service is one I think a lot of people don't even think about.
It can be good volume. I'm not sure if the stock is translated into food service, but if you're making a batch of stock or product and you're putting it into one bladder to
10
deliver,
kilos, right?
it's actually 10 kilos of product that I've put into that one packaging instead of multiple. You know, you can see
Instead of 100 packets. So it tends to work out cheaper, I suppose, in terms of production and packaging and distribution. But then you go, well, is it going to work in food service? Is it a product that would work in food service?
You can make the wheels turn. We use that analogy quite a bit. It's like you need volume to turn on the machine, the production machine. So the more volume you have going through, if you want to upscale. Some people are happy to keep their businesses contained. So this is really the growth journey. If you want to upscale, you need volume, and food service could potentially play a piece in that.
Definitely.
To get your economies of scales down on your raws.
Definitely.
We have a lot of those conversations at startup, and a lot of people try and do both, just to find out which one kind of works
For them.
Which I think is fine. I mean, you need to trial and error. Like you need to try. You try everything right when you start up.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
And then if you go down the path of both, then you just figure out the nuances of both and see what works better, I guess.
Yeah, and one's good for volume, as you said, but the other one's good for brand development, because you're not going to get any brand recognition from food service so much.
No, generally not.
No.
100%.
So, you know, decisions, as Laurie
That's
says.
one thing that we're looking at now, because
Yeah.
we're able to supply to whole food stores in anything from 2 to 5 to 10 kilos to get volumes up. Some cafes are starting to use it as well, and even some meal delivery services actually use it as an ingredient base. So there are different options out there. It's just a matter, I guess, you don't want to overwhelm yourself by doing too much too soon. You just got to pick one, or you can do both. But that's right, and then see which one works best. So with us, and again, as you scale up, there's different lessons to be learned, and then different paths you take and different decisions that you make. So with every, and I guess that's the hardest thing, like getting your product and starting's kind of easy in a way. Getting the volume up is hard, but then comes costs when you get there. So with every different stage comes a different lesson to be learned, or something new to learn. But getting to that midpoint and scaling and deciding where you want to go is definitely a big
There was a phrase I was told when we first started the business, because I was all gung ho and we had our stock coming over. It's like, yes, we're going to go and dominate Australia. Let's go. And people ask that question. It's like, oh, how far do you distribute? We go, I didn't even know we were a distributor at that point in time. Can I just say? Sometimes you can find your place. And I said, oh, we're Australia-wide. Of course we are. Until I realised that Australia is like bigger in land mass than America.
That's right.
It's like just massive, and a naive Kiwi thing to say, I guess. But I had this phrase said to me, and at the time I didn't give it kudos, but now I very much do, and that's you grow into business, you don't go into business. And it really is something that is a journey, and we all get those entrepreneurial moments, and they are so satisfying to bring that to fulfillment and to actually create your vision and be in control of the destiny of that. It is a journey though, and I think we all probably know that's the case.
Yeah. So Brian, when someone approaches you to come manufacture their product, what kind of conversation do you have with them? Because sometimes I imagine they would not have all their ducks in a row, and I'm talking particularly packaging and food technology.
So I guess on our website we say we work from levels 1 to 5 or something. So we get people to sort of put themselves in a level, so they makes them think about where they're at.
Yeah.
And then when they come to us, we sort of know roughly where they're at. When they come to us, they're normally not in the level that they think they're at. Most of them are under, and some are actually way above. But the first thing I guess we talk to them about is why they started the product. Because if they started it for the right reasons, then they're going to keep continuing for the right reasons. That's what we think. And like Kay said earlier, everyone's passionate about their product. But being passionate about your product is one thing. Getting it out to people and making sure it's going to work is another thing. So, because you can't be on the shelf telling people to buy it, it just doesn't work like that.
Mini meals.
That's right. I mean, that's why markets are really good, because you can talk to people, like Kay said, and you can engage them. And 8 times out of 10, they'll buy from you in a market. But in a supermarket, nothing. So when we sit down and talk to people, we say, we ask, why they like the product and why they think it's good. We look at the points of difference, and then we go, well, how can we help you? What are we going to do for you, basically? How can we actually help you? What do you want from us? And then we just have an open and raw conversation. Packaging is one of the things that most people get stuck on. I don't know why, but
Volumes, maybe.
yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's as bad anymore as it used to be in terms of volumes. Like, you can get 1,000 bags printed up now, no problems. That might cost you a little bit more, but they'll print it, they'll ship it, and you'll have your bags ready. Often it's cheaper to get that done than a label, and a bag. So I think the way the world's changed.
Yeah.
Stuff's more accessible. Like, it's a lot more accessible than it used to. It used to be. And I've got a design background, so we help people if they need help with design as well. So I'll look at stuff and offer advice. And I just put my startup hat on and go, what help would they need that I didn't have or I could give? And then I guess it's just trying to make the process as simple, because there's too many people out there that will complicate it.
Oh, yeah.
Our job is to just keep it. And if we can help, fantastic. If we can't help, I'll try and find someone who can help
Yeah.
if we can't, and as long as you can try and grow the product.
That's the benefit of having a community too, I think.
I think so,
right?
yeah.
We
Yeah.
can just share that load and I keep telling people, I can't do marketing, but I know you need to do it.
But it's-
So I'll send you to someone who knows how to do it.
I don't think anyone's in competition. I used to own a gym, and right next door there was another gym, like literally next door. And I said, we're not in competition.
Yeah.
You train people different, so I like different clientele. So rather than work against each other,
Yeah.
how can you help each other? So I don't think anyone's really in competition. Everyone's product's good for a particular reason, and if people have got a good community or network, then everyone's product will.
And there's a lot
that's
to go
right.
around. Like,
Yeah.
that's the
Plenty.
thing, isn't it? Especially like in the stock market. If you took 10% of Master Foods, is it, or Campbell's
Campbell's, not
market,
even
you're
10%.
probably-
Yeah, probably
so-
less, yeah.
That was one thing during COVID. A lot of the more cheaper priced brands obviously couldn't keep up with supply, and because we were able to, we're able to take that market, and now we can kind of see that we're able to keep them because people are able to try it. Because you can go so much effort getting the product on the shelf, but as a consumer, you know, they might be loyal to a particular brand, so switching them over to another brand, what's going to make them buy it? But once they like it, you know, they'll rebuy it, and then it'll grow through their word of mouth. So building a community is really important. And even, I guess, another challenge is, as a producer, is how much when you're scaling up, how much volume or how much do I make? You've got to keep in mind the best before date. You don't want too much sitting there. So it's working with the distributors and also working with the purchasing officers to get an idea. It took me almost a year or two only now to find that consistency, and now I can finally, after all that time, okay, this is how much I need to make. Well, roughly predicting, like this week I was taken by surprise, which is a good and bad problem to have, but it's just getting to know how much to make and be able to produce if you're making it in-house, and I guess the same, and allowing notice if you are contracting it out. Because
I think we would have all seen, you know, a like story in COVID when the shelves were being stripped bare, and suddenly there were only the brands that, you know, were usually on the bottom shelf,
Yeah.
on the top shelf, that were left.
Yeah.
And in our supermarket, it was pasta. Like, the pasta just disappeared.
Yeah.
But there was this amazing local brand that could always support our local Coles, and I use it to this day. Yeah, it's really interesting how, you know, patterns have shifted.
I think because people, they're also price sensitive, right?
Yeah.
So if you used to pay 99 cents for pasta,
Yeah.
you're not going to pay $1.99.
Yeah.
So, but when there's only $1.99 left,
You buy it.
you buy
you
it.
buy it,
And
and then you
find out
realise it's
how good
only
it is.
another $1, right? So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. So
Exactly. So we've only got a few minutes left. Can we talk about trends? Because I think you guys will have seen the same thing we have. It's the trends have been in sustainable packaging. The trends have been in more transparency around their food and their products. Like you know, found, Laurie, you've built your whole business on that. What other trends have you guys seen? Any? Or is that kind of
Yeah, there's the visual ones. There's
Yeah.
ones like, you know, vegan. And when we had the paleo trend, that was amazing, and then that sort of morphed into keto, and then from there we've got vegan and probably whole food eating and sustainable, most definitely. I think the transparency piece goes also beyond that. The fact we've got one supplier that on the back of their ingredients, the transparency is so big for them. That's the biggest font on the back of the pack. These are our ingredients, you know, because I really wanted to communicate. Because mostly ingredients are the down there with the new panel and the nutritional panel and the, you know, the really
Just
tiny.
gotta fit it on now.
That's
Yeah.
right, because you've got to fit it on the pack.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've got to get all these things on. But transparency of the source of supply, of where that's coming from. So there is, we see some things where people are buying things in from China and they go, country PRC.
Yeah.
China.
China. Yeah. I think Australian maids
Australian made.
Big at the moment.
Huge,
Yeah.
and people are supporting local. I've definitely seen
and
that.
Australian
There is a
owned.
local trend.
I mean, it's hard with Australian made. Australian made's fine, but a lot of ingredients you can't source in Australia. So it's really hard to, because we get people all the time saying, can't you use Australian walnuts or Australian
Dates.
dates or some things you just can't get in Australia. So Australian made and Australian owned, I think we're finding a lot of people want to make that stand out. But I think a lot of trends are the same trend. They just get redone and rehashed and renamed.
Different name.
That's all it is. At the end of the day, it's all the same trend, I think. I don't
It's not going well as a benefit.
that's right, it's all the same.
Right,
I
but
mean,
it's
I see it as
organic,
the
vegan
same. Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
sort of shooting towards that direction.
That's right, yeah.
And what celebrities doing what.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think
That's
collagen's,
another trend.
I mean,
Collagen is
collagen's,
And gut health is huge as well. So
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
I guess, are here to stay. People with certain dietary requirements, so products that are gluten-free, lactose-free, dairy-free, all those types are here. I remember when we first started, paleo was huge, and now I've seen it go down, and keto's come up. So it's almost like, is it going to stay, is it going to go? You know, I think when you're creating products, you want to kind of look at creating things that people need on an ongoing basis. Trends, good thing, but at the same time, things that people can use every day that's always going to be there, that'll be a staple, is one thing that I've learned. Definitely gut health, people are a lot more health conscious and focused as well. Reading labels too, looking at less numbers, want to know where the ingredients come from. And I think what Brian was saying, that we're trying to source locally, you try to, but with us being in the certified organic sector, it is quite hard. But once you explain to customers that you have to source it overseas because it's not grown in Australia, they understand. And if you just emphasise it is natural, we're trying to get it in as raw form as possible, and just having that conversation, even with the distributors, and they pass it on to the reps, and having that transparency is huge.
I think a good thing to note too about trends is, I know when we had Rumble's Paleo, like that was when Paleo was big, but we also found back then a lot of people, once Paleo started to slow down 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, people go, product's great, but I don't eat Paleo. So the product's great, but I don't eat Paleo. So if you remove the word,
The paleo, and just have the rumble. So.
the product's great, right? So
I've
when
seen
you,
one brand do that actually.
Yeah,
and
so
make difference.
when you think about branding or naming your products, keep that in the back of your mind too. So yes, there's trends, but trends come and go.
Yeah.
So if you point out the key, why is it great? It's all natural, it tastes good. Those won't change.
Yeah.
But the names and the trends, I think, will always change.
We saw that with gluten-free quite a few years ago, and people were saying, but I want to target the gluten-free market. And I'm going, but anyone can eat it. So why are you targeting that 0.1%
That's right.
of the market when you actually could have a broader range, right? And I think it's just translated to your point, through the trends.
Yeah, of course.
Paleo, the gluten-free, the vegan even.
Yeah.
Some of the things that are marked vegan now have always been vegan.
Always
I mean,
vegan.
heaps of stuff. Yeah. Plant-based.
Plant-based is huge.
Plant-based is,
And even with us, we always get requests saying, can you at least provide a vegan or plant-based option? So that's something that's, if you have,
And I think you might agree or disagree, I'm not sure, but I think Australia's 3 to 5 years behind in trends anyway. So, you go overseas and you look at what they're doing there. Like we're way behind here, way behind. So we look at what's happening overseas and we try to bring it here. Sometimes you're just too early.
Too early for it.
Yeah, just too early,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but it's just too early.
Our first vegan meal business was about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and he just couldn't make it work because it just wasn't the right time.
So if you can hang tough,
Yeah.
you might just get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are. Keep in mind, we're 3 to 5 years behind you, which is a shame, but
Just the way it
it's
is.
just how it is. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point to kind of finish on, Brian. So for small business owners, hang tough, you'll get there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that's
Closing
a way to wrap it
remarks.
up?
And it's fun. I mean, you got to enjoy it too. So
You'll
Yeah.
enjoy it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, even the downs you'll enjoy.
Yeah, well, if you,
Back out of.
that's right.
There's always
Um,
sunshine somewhere.
Yes.
So there were a couple of questions, I think. And if there's any questions in the room, I want to actually open it up to you guys as well. Mimi from Wildney was asking about how you manage the finances of bringing in a contract manufacturer and a distributor, because obviously that's a financial commitment that you need to plan for, right?
Yeah, I think getting the numbers is always a challenge, I think, figuring out your numbers in the beginning. When we started Rumbles, I don't know where we got those numbers from, but they came from somewhere.
They were great in the beginning.
Hey?
They were good to start with.
Yes, they were. But then factoring, because you always forget to factor in something. Like Laurie was saying before, she didn't factor in price increases. And so numbers are always difficult, but they're always changing. So you've got to leave room for a manufacturer to make their money, obviously, room for a distributor to make their money, and leave room for the store to make their money, marketing,
Promos.
and then 8th or 9th in the line, you'll make some.
So if you're lucky.
If you like, you make a little bit more money to then hopefully reinvest and to grow the brand. So there's a lot of people that will pick along the way. And I mean, in my experience, I don't think you ever get it right the first time because you don't know everything the first time. So you'll figure out a rough price, you'll go, well, that works. But then you'll go, well, if I order more, my volumes will increase, my prices will come down. So it's always a balancing game, I think, with finances.
And the price increase element that you were talking about, I think to have some vision to that, so you have some elasticity in your raws, because you can't go to La Mana or IGA Brunswick or Leo's every 5 minutes, every time the raw price moves up or down.
You just can't.
They won't entertain it. So you need to settle on the price. And then see that for ideally a 12-month, but even if it's a 6-month window, right? So that you know that that's my price, and I'm going to have to, just manage the waves on the ocean as the price moves around, because that's what happens with raws, and particularly if you're importing it, there is a little bit more wriggle room about elasticity in that again because of exchange rate. So if that's moving around, and we all know that seed prices go up and down and things like that all the time. So you want to have some elasticity there in your pricing model, and it can be tricky.
You can often negotiate too with your suppliers. I mean, I know we buy a lot of raw ingredients, so we can lock in prices for 12 months. And a lot of suppliers are open to negotiate too. It's hard in the beginning when you say, I need a box, because here's the price, right? So, but if you tell them your story and if you've got good suppliers, then they might lock in the prices for you. I guess that's, and I'm not advertising here, but where contract manufacturing comes in, is that we can lock in prices, so we know that almonds are going to cost $8 and they're not going to go up for 12 months, whether or not they go up. So you've got a little bit of surety that way. So, but it's always worth, don't ever not have the conversation. Because you're scared that they might say something that you don't even know what they're going to say. So I'm always on the theory that say yes and then figure it out later, and always ask the question. Because what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Well, if you don't ask, you don't get, right?
They're just going to say no, that's the price.
I did it with my suppliers just recently, now that once we built up that relationship and I was able to meet minimum order quantities and move to larger volume and quantities, we were able to kind of get a better idea of bring down pricing and have that discount structure in place. But as Veronica had mentioned before, when we first started with Sanal, we priced our products at a certain range that we thought the consumer would pay for, not factoring in all these extra costs. So we kind of took it on for a couple of years, and it was only now that we realised, and even just based on feedback and support from the distributors, that we had to increase it just in order to be sustainable long term, but to be able to continue to supply. Because as the larger the volumes, the more you grow, the prices do come down. But until you get to that point, costings are so important because they can really make or break sometimes.
And navigating that space from a distributor's perspective, often sometimes startups will come and say, here's our product. And we will get two different conversations going on. They'll give us pricing, but that pricing that they say is our buy price is the same wholesale that current retailers are paying. And we say, well, it's going to go up 30% from there. And then you see the fear coming, because then people go, but I won't sell at that price. So having mentorship and starting with a solid pricing model, so you know what all the components are, and you layer it, And then you go, well, do I think? Because, you know, in marketing world 101, they would always say you start from the RRP and you work back. You don't build your price, you take it off, so that you not say, well, you know, because you've done all your focus groups, your market research, and you know, and all that fancy stuff, right? Which most of us don't get the time to do. But that's how you build the price. I think for startups, you want to go from the bottom up.
Yeah. And sometimes you just can't do it at the price. Like it's just, if you want it for $3, but it's going to cost $6. It's just going to cost $6. So.
And I've seen it work the other way. So the market will bear, you know, a certain price, but your expenses are actually very, very low. So then, you know, talking the startup into
increasing the price. Take the profit.
Exactly. Take the profit.
Take the profit.
And if you
Absolutely.
really
What you're doing it for.
And
I've seen it
for sure. Because then it just increases the game. You've got more options. You take the profit, and you might just sit with that, or you might go and buy some cryptocurrency. No, but what I mean is that you might sit with that, or you can now reinvest back into the product, which might be in a different layer of marketing, which makes it more visual, which increases your volumes and what you've got.
Yeah.
That's something that I just did with Jane recently, because I went to work and I was saying, Jane, I'm stuck, I'm kind of at this point, and we sort of like went back to review things, and when you start to break down, oh, okay, this is just that difference in pricing when you change that structure, it makes a huge difference overall.
50 cents.
Yeah, just 50 cents.
Oh, it's huge difference. Yeah. Huge.
And even though you panic, because will the customers pay that
That's
more?
right, that's the fear moment.
Yeah, and then retailers, but then once I explain to them, well, listen, we haven't done anything for 4 years, because a lot of people do small increases gradually. We had to go a little bit higher because we took it for so long, but and they understand, and they've all been really supportive. The customers still tend to repurchase because they're with the brand, so it's just that open transparency.
100%, and having a conversation with the trade.
Yeah.
Like Cole would say that the first time we as a distributor got given a price increase from the supplier and we had to translate that into the market, we had that same anxiety. It's like, oh my Lord, it's going to be wiped off the shelf. We're going to lose all that real estate. And it's like, you do, and you get nervous. And I guess it's about a maturing of a business. You get to the stage that price increases are just part of the game.
Yeah.
It's just part of the game. And so we, like coming out of COVID, we had a plethora of price increases. It was just massive. It's like we were pinging them up all over the place. And still happening now because you know, there's the ships coming to the country, they're all getting bottlenecked, I heard today at LA and whatnot, so all the costing for shipping changes.
Yeah, freight's
freight just
at the moment,
and you know, the trucks around our country are putting their prices up, things like that. Things that are outside, just so outside.
But that's normal, like, people expect price increases. Like, I don't think there's any business that doesn't expect the price of something to go up. So.
I had the buyer at Richie's one day say to me, she goes, we haven't had any price increases from you guys for 2 months.
Is everything all right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to do them every month, but there's only so much you can hit on your margin before you go, oh, I've got to.
You've got to lift.
And it's not a lot. It might be 5 cents or 10 cents, or it might be just a little bit, but enough to get you out of that sticking point.
So embrace it is what we're saying.
Yes, they're fine.
Nick, have we got any online questions?
Can I ask, yeah?
Oh, I thought they'd be asking by now.
Just to finish on your financial one though for that lady, the thing about it is if you've built your pricing model, then it's no surprises when you go to see the next level of your journey, the distributor or whoever it will be. And it takes out that, and so then you're building that into the game and into the conversation, especially if there's a mentor in place for that, to be able to talk it through. And so you're preparing for it. So the moment that you realise that there's only 24 hours in a day and you're trying to cram 30 hours worth of work into that day, so you start triggering the whole idea about how do I make this sustainable and robust, that you already know that you've got it in your back pocket. So it's done. So that's a question that happens when you're not thinking about it.
And don't forget your time in that price, because if you're going to step out and get a manufacturer to do it, you haven't factored in any cost. I know you have to put your own skin in the game, which is fine, but even if you factor yourself in at $10 an hour or 20, the minimum wage is what we suggest, at least it's already in there. So you've factored whatever 30 cents per unit. So if a manufacturer comes back and goes, it's going to cost you 25 cents, they're not, it's covered already in your pricing, so
Well,
it's
we've all
important.
done it right. Like I
yeah.
remember throwing product into the back of my car when we were little. You know, that was the delivery vehicle driven to the other side of the city. Got caught in traffic coming back over the bridge. You know,
3 hours to sell
whatever.
$8 bucks.
And to sell $8.
Yeah,
Just
like
put it
it's-
on the courier for $12.
Yeah, that's right, you do it,
Whatever.
but if you can think about it before, then it won't give you that shock at the end when you've got to increase. Because everything, all the stages increase, not just that little component. So.
We pay ourselves last often in
Yeah.
small, so
Yes.
Yeah.
it's something to think about.
Yeah. What I tell my clients is we're going to factor in minimum wage because if you get hit by a bus, someone else is going to want to get paid to do what you do.
Yeah, that's right.
So basically, you need to be able to factor that into your price.
Unless you want to work for free.
Yeah,
It's
find
an
someone
option.
else.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
It might be your mum.
Yeah, I was going to say that's usually family.
A lot of free hours.
Yeah. Yes, market
Yes,
research.
that's right.
Market research and a production team.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a good point though, rely on your friends and family in the beginning if you need to.
Yeah.
Because most people are willing to help, absolutely, for some free food.
Yeah.
They'll help, and it's worth it because then they'll also show you the inconsistencies or things you've got to fix that you never picked out when you're doing it on your own as well.
Yeah. So if there's no more questions, Mick, okay. Then we might wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much for sharing your experience.
No
It's
worries.
lovely to be a part of a community that, gives
We got one question.
as much as you do.
We got,
Okay, I hope
uh,
it's a worthwhile one now.
yeah, hopefully. You mentioned trends. Is it important to follow trends to be successful, or is brand confidence more important?
Oh, you definitely the latter.
Mm.
Yeah, I wouldn't follow trends. It's about the vision that you have for your product and how much currency or goodwill you can build in your brand. And so from there you can leverage into other product concepts, and I'm sure you guys are thinking about that, from that point of view. So not to follow the trends.
I think trends, if you're already established and you can throw out a vegan product and then afford to have it die in 2 years, I think then that's not bad. But if you're just doing that, by the time you develop it, produce it, pack it, the trend's probably gone.
And the
really.
volume's not there. Your packaging might be 2 years worth of packaging.
That's right, yeah. So if you've already got a brand and you want to add to it, it's probably not bad to see what happens.
It's kind of the reverse of the conversation we were having before. If you've got a product that's vegan that's not labelled vegan, maybe you can label it.
That's right. Exactly right. Just
Stamp on
stick it
it.
on there. Like your next package, right? Just
That's right.
add it
Pull
on there.
that out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's also more competition when you follow a brand. We've seen that in the collagen market. So we've got our stocks as an example. We're branching out into broths, not to jump on the trend, because it'll be evaluating product where it's salt reduced, so still keeping in that healthy food alternative. But yeah, I've seen it a lot after doing a lot of research of people jumping on things, and it just goes up and up and down, up and down. So you just want something, I guess, like we mentioned before, that's going to be around long term is really important. So, but if it has an added health benefit, it makes, it does help because people do like that. And I guess it all depends on the market and who you're targeting as well.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, I guess from my experience, just go into a market, do a product based purely on a trend.
Yeah.
Because it all depends on how quickly you can pivot into that trend
Yep.
as well. Because quite often, by the time you get wind of the trend, other people, because a trend starts somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's banging the drum of the trend.
Yeah.
And we saw it most poignantly, I guess, with hand sanitizer last year. So April happened, and we had suppliers all talking about sanitizer, and the two suppliers we currently had as incumbent were starting to run out of ethanol because of that. So everybody's going to China, talking about China, asking people to prepay. It was a frenzy. And now you have, I don't know, about 5 different options in Australian Post of sanitizer.
Sanitizer, that's right.
It was a boom and bust real quick.
It's a tenth of the price now.
Yeah.
I know, crazy days. And people got stuck. We've got one supplier's got 10 containers of it sitting in the shed.
Sitting in the shed.
It's excess stock. Because there's big brands as well that come in and jump on it, and it's really difficult to compete with them.
It is. They've got deep pockets for
That's
marketing
right.
and stuff.
So we could continue this conversation. Are you guys open? I'm going to put you on the spot now. Are you open to continuing this conversation with our audience after? Do you want to make the details available so they can get in touch with you?
No problem.
Probably an email address would be good.
Yeah, that's all.
Great. Okay, so we'll include that if that's okay in the recording when we send it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No
Fantastic.
problem.
Okay. Thank you
That's
again.
right.
Thank you again for making time and for sharing your knowledge. Can we thank our guests?